months after the murder of Sarah Everard by a police officer, the government announced an inquiry into failures in policing.
We need answers as to why this was allowed to happen.
The onslaught of mounting questions have continued after the conclusion of the case, but just when those answers will come is unknown.
This inquiry needs to be able to get to the truth about why things went so badly wrong, why it was possible for a dangerous man to be able to serve as a police officer for so long.
Also tonight, the Prime Minister tells us to buckle up for a tough winter ahead with big price rises on the horizon. A sickle cell breakthrough for thousands who live with the disease, the first new treatment in 20 years. And a talent born out of trauma. A crash changed the course of his life and gave him the skills of a modern Picasso.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening. The failures that allowed a serving police officer to abduct and murder Sarah Everard are to be investigated by a government-commissioned inquiry. The Home Secretary said the public have a right to know why Wayne Couzens wasn't identified as a sexual predator despite concerns about his behaviour. Addressing the Conservative Party conference, Priti Patel said she wanted answers to ensure it never happens again. The inquiry could also look at wider issues raised by the shocking case, including vetting and workplace behaviour. But campaigners fear it may not go far enough. From Manchester, here's our political correspondent, Libby Vina.
It was a crime that shocked a nation. Flowers still laid in tribute, 7 months on. But when Sarah Everard's killer was jailed last week, the police suggested after her murder, women needed to be more streetwise. Today, the government bowed to pressure and ordered an independent inquiry into how Wayne Couzens was deemed fit to serve in the Met.
It is abhorrent that a serving police officer was able to abuse his position of power, authority and trust to commit such a horrific crime. The public have a right to know what systematic failures enabled his continued employment as a police officer.
Home Secretary, the Prime Minister said he trusted the police. What's changed? Home Secretary, should women trust the police?
It's still not clear how wide the scope of the inquiry will be. But among those welcoming it, a woman who says her own rape allegation wasn't properly investigated. She says no one really believed her.
I tell people I was drugged and I was raped, and I don't remember most of it. And I think if someone makes me choose being raped or reporting it to the police and being treated like that, it's like another violation. I wouldn't go through with it again.
One senior Labour backbencher says the inquiry must have powers to summon witnesses and look at
Dancing on
police
Ice with the
attitudes to women.
It's really important that this inquiry can look into how it was possible that such a dangerous man could serve as a police officer for so long,
Tonight's headlines here in the South.
Cleared to carry firearms, but also to look more widely into other cases involving allegations of abuse by police officers.
Meanwhile, a Conservative police and crime commissioner says the whole justice system works against the victim.
The court backlogs are unacceptable, and we do need to do, both as a government and locally, everything we can to make sure that they've got the resources they can to deal with this, because one of the problems with the backlog being so long is that women aren't staying in the process, and they're not staying in as victims, and they're not staying as witnesses.
But what do women who listened to the Home Secretary today think?
Do you trust the police?
No. I would like to trust the police, though.
I think if I was asked to get into a police car, I still would do so. I might have a second glance, second thought, but at the end of the day, no, I trust the vast majority of the police force.
There's no doubt confidence in the police has been shaken, perhaps why an inquiry was deemed necessary.
Just a few days ago, a government minister was suggesting that Wayne Couzens was one bad apple, and the police were saying that women should be more suspicious if stopped by an officer. Now it seems the government has accepted that Sarah Everard's murder has wider implications.
Libby, thank you. Well, staying with the Conservative Party conference, and the Prime Minister has told ITV News that despite the cost of living crisis, there's no alternative to the government's tax rises and benefits cut. Boris Johnson said an increase in wages and productivity was the only way out, rather than higher welfare payments. And he rejected fears that his plans will likely push up inflation, making cost of living even higher. He spoke to our political editor, Robert Peston.
Boris Johnson, a wobbly ride, as it feels for most of us.
Gas prices are up, petrol prices are up, food prices are up. This is a very serious cost of living crisis, isn't it?
I appreciate that many people find the going tough at the moment, and the phenomena that we're seeing at the moment are very, very much part of a global phenomenon of the world economy coming alive, waking up, and sucking in demand.
The problem is that people are suffering. They are wondering, how they're going to heat their homes and buy food. And this is happening at a time when you have cut their income by reducing the universal credit uplift. You're increasing national insurance. You've frozen tax allowances. You're making them poorer.
Well, what we're seeing actually over the more than a year or so is an increase in wages, and it's high time that it happened, frankly, because I think that we've had an environment in the UK where we've accepted a low wage, low skill, low productivity approach, and that needs to change. Because what you're talking about is taking more money in tax and pushing it from everybody and pushing it through the welfare system to subsidise low pay.
The pay rises that we are seeing for HGV drivers, for fruit pickers, for people in the supply chain are actually making the country less productive because, broadly, there is no investment at the moment and they are doing the same job for more money. So you are actually doing the reverse of what you want to do. You are reducing productivity.
No, most of our lifetimes, the UK has relied on a certain economic model, which has meant that we're basically per head per worker, we're less productive. It's a terrible thing to admit, but we're less productive.
You and I agree about this. Compared to Germany and France, it's a scandal.
And the United States of America, and even Italy, and so on. So the answer is not to go back to the old model.
But the transition from where we are to where you want to go will take years. And in the meantime, you are reducing productivity and you are risking inflation and you're actually risking interest rates going up at precisely the wrong moment.
In a famous phrase, there is no alternative. There is no alternative. The UK has got to and we can do much, much better by becoming a higher wage, higher productivity economy. I confidently predict, as I've said many times, that this Christmas will be considerably better than last Christmas. So,
can't be worse. That is not a fair comparison.
Well, look, I'm telling you, it's going to be much better than last Christmas, all right?
Johnson's great slogan is building back better, but working out which bricks go where to create an economy that works for everyone when living standards for millions are under such pressure, it isn't so easy. Robert Peston, ITV News in Manchester.
Only 27 of the visas on offer for international tanker drivers have been taken up. It emerged today. As many as 5,000 are on offer from the government to try and ease the petrol crisis. There are still queues for fuel in some parts of the southeast today. And farmers have warned of a welfare disaster after it was confirmed 600 healthy pigs have been culled due to a shortage of staff in abattoirs. They're concerned more than 100,000 may have to be killed if the situation doesn't improve. The scandal that saw women and girls in Northern Ireland held against their will, used as unpaid labour and forced to give up their babies for adoption should be investigated by a public inquiry. That was the recommendation of a panel looking at how the victims and survivors were treated over a 68-year period. It also called for immediate apologies from the institutions involved and compensation. As Sangeeta Lal reports, it's another major step forward in a long battle for justice and truth.
These buildings were once thought of as sanctuaries, a place to help women who'd fallen pregnant and supposedly lost their way. But instead, many who once lived here say they were stripped of their human dignity, forced to give up their babies and work without any pay. The women of mother and baby institutions in Northern Ireland have felt silenced for decades until now.
It was absolutely devastating to be incarcerated, and that is the only word I can use.
Adele Johnston had her son while living at a mother and baby home at 18 years old, her first child who she never wanted to give up.
We give birth alone. I walked down the corridor with him in my arms and I handed him to a nun who turned her back and walked away. And I didn't see that child for over 40 years.
Her experience is one of thousands shared today in a new report calling for a public inquiry so these stories are never lost. The institutions are known to have run across Northern Ireland between 1922 and 1990, with at least 10,500 women reported as living there and carrying out unpaid labour in workhouses known as Magdalene laundries. Girls as young as 12 were sent there, the oldest 44. A third of women, though, were under the age of 19. You can still see some of the buildings, like the one behind this wall, where thousands of women were reportedly shamed into silence because of the stigma that surrounded being pregnant and unmarried, something that still affects them today and the children they were forced to give up. Maria Cogley was put up for adoption, which she says her mother was forced into. It took 40 years for them to meet again.
You grow up not really knowing anything about your history, and the institutions and the churches involved, first of all, need to take accountability. They need to put their hands up and say, yeah, we did do these things.
Recognition, though, that for many would barely scratch the surface for the justice they long for. Families now want a full investigation to expose exactly what happened behind these doors, so the trauma women suffered is no longer ignored. Sangeeta Lal, ITV News.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News.
I will be screaming at night sometimes and my child will come in and she will ask, "Mummy, are you okay?"
The breakthrough treatment that could change the lives of those with sickle cell disease. Plus, how do we reduce Britain's thermal footprint? A special report into the climate impact of heating our homes. Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. With wholesale gas prices soaring to their highest level on record, ending the UK's reliance on home boilers seems a very timely thing to do. It's also a key government target to help reduce carbon emissions ahead of the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow. One alternative to traditional boilers are heat pumps, which absorb warmth from the outside to warm your home inside. They don't come cheap, though. And a leading climate advisor to the government has told ITV News not enough is being done to phase out gas, as our consumer editor Chris Troy explains.
Britain's thermal footprint can be seen from space, and almost 90% of home heating visible in this satellite image comes from gas. Just outside Leeds, this household changed today. Out went the old boiler, replaced by this low-carbon heat pump.
The price of gas has gone up. It's better for the environment. I'm like anybody else. You know, I'll go along with things that help the environment. But I think it'll be a long, long time before everybody gets one of these, and it actually makes a massive difference.
Heat pumps use an outside unit to absorb warmth from the air or ground, even down to minus 15 degrees. A compressor boosts that heat, feeding radiators and water systems. By 2025, gas boilers will be banned from new UK homes, and by 2033, government advisors want all replacement gas boilers banned too. Taking out our gas boilers would cut carbon emissions from home heating by 73%. Though grants may be available to some, the upfront cost is typically £10,000.
This is the Research and Development Centre into Greener Heat.
Here they say costs will quickly fall, for the first time making heat pumps a mass market option for millions.
It's big. A lot of people would think it's ugly, and they're 3 times the cost of a gas equivalent. Aren't those really big drawbacks?
I totally believe that over the next 18 months we will get this down to the same price as a gas boiler that you currently have in your home. Some people may not think it's the most attractive thing in the world, but it's significantly better for the environment. It's significantly more efficient way of heating your home. And sometimes there are trade-offs.
Found in the North Sea during the 1960s, gas became a matter of national pride.
Natural gas is pumped through the mains at far higher pressure than the old coal gas.
But it creates CO2, and the UK's leading advisor on climate change told us government isn't doing enough.
The government doesn't have a plan for moving to heat pumps or indeed a range of alternatives to gas boilers, but it's going to need to have a better plan if we're going to make these targets that Parliament has set.
Today, this household made a switch which millions of us are eventually likely to follow. Some climate change problems are very close to home, but the solution could be too, not just for us, but also for the planet. Chris Choi, ITV News in West Yorkshire.
A new treatment for sickle cell disease has been hailed as a revolution for sufferers. The condition is serious and lifelong and can cause severe pain and organ failure, and those who have it end up in hospital often. But this new drug not only eases the impact on the patients, it also reduces the burden on the NHS. As our health editor Emily Morgan reports, for many, it's long overdue.
Looking at Chanel, you'd think she's a perfectly healthy 37-year-old. The truth is she wishes she was.
I will be screaming at night sometimes and my child will come in and she'll ask, "Mummy, are you okay?"
Sickle cell disease has left Chanel blinded in one eye and suffering from such pain. She has to have blood transfusions every 5 weeks.
I feel tired, I feel weak. I'm not able to, be the parent that I'd wished I want to be, because being tired doesn't allow me to always be present. So without the transfusions, I don't know what I'll do without them.
She might, though, now be in line for a new drug, the first to be approved for the condition in more than 20 years. Sickle cell disease is a genetic illness where red blood cells are an unusual shape and can block blood vessels. It can cause organ failure and the need for frequent blood transfusions. The new treatment, crizanlizumab, is given once a month and ensures cells can carry oxygen around the body.
Until now, the options for treatment have been very limited, so there's always been, for more than 2 decades now, a huge unmet need for more options, more treatments for this disease.
There are 15,000 people in the UK affected, mainly from African and Caribbean backgrounds. Many are asking why this hasn't come sooner.
The NHS is absolutely committed to continuing to invest not only in sickle cell disease, but all those other conditions, that disproportionately affect different segments of our population.
But would you agree, if there was more investment made, then we wouldn't have to wait 20 years for more treatment?
We can look over the last 19 months and the pace, for example, at which the COVID vaccines have been developed. The will absolutely is there.
Chanel hopes the drug will benefit the 5,000 eligible patients and that it really is a revolutionary moment. Emily Morgan, ITV News.
Facebook's founder Mark Zuckerberg has apologised for the 6-hour outage that affected the company's social media services. Facebook, WhatsApp and Instagram all stopped working yesterday due to an internal technical issue. The 3 apps are owned by Facebook and share the same infrastructure. Torrential rain in London has caused flash flooding in parts of the capital, disrupting tube and train services. Knightsbridge in southwest London was particularly badly hit. And for the first time in 6 years, the singer Adele has announced that new music is on its way. She teased fans by releasing this snippet of the track Easy on Me on Twitter. Next tonight, to a different kind of artist who's achieved extraordinary success. Matthew Rutherford suffered major brain damage after a car crash, leaving him unable to talk. To help him communicate, he was encouraged to take up painting. And the results have been so stunning, he now has his first major exhibition, as Rachel Younger reports.
Working at astonishing speed, a man whose life was brought to a standstill, completing a painting in just 20 minutes. Matt Rutherford wasn't expected to survive the car crash that damaged his brain and stole his ability to speak. Not only did he pull through, he found a way to communicate again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh. And you used drawing to explain what you wanted and things, didn't you? You used drawing at first, even like for a drink, toilet, because he wasn't able to talk.
For someone already locked in, lockdown was all but unbearable in this tiny flat. So watched over by his feline companion Chips, Matt started painting and found he couldn't stop.
How much time do you spend at the easel?
A lot.
Yeah.
So you don't sleep too much?
Yeah, no much.
As the paintings have piled up, so has interest in Matt's work. From galleries where he's been compared to Picasso to fans at one of the world's leading art dealers.
Definitely the strong colours have the influence of the Fauvist group of artists, which is all to do with spontaneous expression. And I think that's what you get with Matthew, because he's playing out his ideas in his artwork.
And whatever's been taken from Matt, his sense of mischief remains completely intact.
What have you been painting? It's me?
Yes.
No. Yeah?
I think that's called taking the Picasso by a thoroughly modern painter who's turned frustration and silence into art that speaks for itself. Rachel Younger, ITV News, Derby.
Nice one, Matt. And finally, space today gained a couple more stars, for the time being at least.
And liftoff. Liftoff of Soyuz MS-19 with an actress and her producer beginning a journey to the International Space Station.
This is the moment a Russian actress and director launched into space to shoot their new film. Yulia Peresild was selected from 3,000 actors. Alongside director Klim Shipenko, they'll spend 12 days in space. They've beaten a NASA project with Tom Cruise to shoot the first film in space. That's it from us. Rag will be here with news at 10, but from me and the whole of the Evening News team, bye-bye.